The Kreth, a species forged in the fires of endless war, had long held a dominant position in the galaxy. From the moment they first developed spacefaring technology, they set out on a campaign of conquest, crushing every weaker civilization that stood in their path. Their society was built around a single, unwavering belief: might makes right. The Kreth viewed themselves as the pinnacle of evolution, a species destined to rule over all others. They had the most advanced weapons, the most disciplined armies, and a culture that glorified conquest above all else. To them, the galaxy was theirs for the taking, and they would stop at nothing to expand their empire. Their military was a reflection of their society, efficient, ruthless, and utterly convinced of its own superiority. Every Kreth warrior was trained from birth to be a soldier, conditioned to believe in the absolute dominance of their kind. Their fleets were vast, armed with the latest and destructive technology, and their strategies were honed through centuries of warfare. The Kreth saw no equals among the other species of the galaxy, only potential subjects to be subjugated or exterminated. Their history was a testament to this belief, filled with tales of glorious victories and civilizations that had been erased from existence simply for daring to resist. But it wasn't just their military might that fueled their arrogance. It was their absolute certainty that they were the rightful rulers of the galaxy. The Kreth believed that their dominance was a natural order, an inevitable truth that no other species could challenge. They had conquered countless worlds, enslaved millions, and faced no real opposition. To the Kreth, the idea that any species could stand against them was laughable, a fantasy entertained only by the weak and the foolish. They viewed the Galactic Council, a coalition of various species that sought to maintain peace and balance in the galaxy, as nothing more than a group of impotent bureaucrats, powerless to stop the Kreth's rise to supremacy. As the Kreth Empire grew, so did their ambitions. They were no longer content with merely conquering planets. They sought to prove themselves as the ultimate power in the galaxy. The Kreth High Command, driven by an insatiable hunger for glory, began to set their sights on even greater conquests. They envisioned a galaxy united under Kreth rule, where all other species would either submit or be destroyed. Their leaders spoke of a grand destiny, where the Kreth would become the undisputed rulers of the stars, their name feared and revered by all who lived. This ambition drove them to push their expansionist agenda further and faster, with little regard for the warnings of those who tried to stand in their way. The Galactic Council, aware of the Kreth's growing power and the threat they posed to the balance of the galaxy, attempted to curb their ambitions through diplomacy and warnings. But the Kreth, in their arrogance, dismissed these efforts as the desperate pleas of weaker beings. They saw the Council as an obstacle, a relic of a bygone era that had no place in their new order. The Kreth viewed the Council's warnings not as a cause for caution but as a challenge to their supremacy, one that they would gladly rise to meet. Among the many species discussed in the Council's warnings was humanity, a species the Kreth had heard of but never considered worthy of their attention. To the Kreth, humans were just another primitive race, insignificant in the grand scheme of the galaxy. They were aware of humanity's existence, but saw no reason to concern themselves with such a minor species. After all, what could a race that had only recently achieved space travel possibly offer in terms of resistance? The Kreth's intelligence reports on humanity were sparse, filled with dismissive assessments that labeled them as nothing more than a minor annoyance at best. In a council meeting, where the potential threat posed by humanity was brought up, the Kreth representatives openly mocked the idea. They laughed at the notion that humans could pose any real danger to their empire. The warnings about humanity's resilience, their capacity for innovation, and their potential for rapid adaptation were all met with derision. The Kreth saw these traits as irrelevant, believing that no amount of adaptability could make up for what they perceived as humanity's inherent weakness. To the Kreth, the idea that humans could challenge them was as absurd as a child trying to fight a seasoned warrior. They were so confident in their superiority that they ignored the very real threat that humanity represented. In their arrogance, the Kreth made a critical error. They failed to see that humanity's greatest strength was not in their technology or their numbers but in their ability to rise to any challenge, no matter how insurmountable it seemed. The Kreth's dismissal of humanity would soon prove to be their undoing, as they embarked on an invasion that would change the course of galactic history forever. The Kreth approached their invasion of Earth with the same meticulous precision that had brought them countless victories across the galaxy. Their high command, confident in their superior technology and military might, saw this as just another campaign in their expansionist agenda. They studied Earth's defenses, analyzing every satellite, every weapon, and every military installation. The Kreth believed that their knowledge of warfare, honed over centuries of conquest, would make this invasion swift and decisive. They planned every detail, from the initial assault to the occupation of major cities, fully expecting that humanity would crumble before their overwhelming force. In their arrogance, the Kreth believed that humanity's relatively recent entry into spacefaring was a clear indication of their inferiority. They saw Earth's defenses as primitive, a mere formality to be brushed aside. The Kreth's technological advancements were centuries ahead of what they assumed humanity could muster. Their weapons were capable of obliterating entire continents, and their ships were equipped with energy shields that they believed would make them invulnerable to any human counterattack. The Kreth commanders boasted that the invasion would be over in hours, with Earth's surrender following soon after. When the invasion began, the Kreth executed their plan with the cold efficiency that had become their hallmark. Their ships descended upon Earth's atmosphere, deploying waves of fighters and bombers to neutralize key military targets. Initial scans of Earth's defenses confirmed their expectations. Human technology was nowhere near the level of the Kreth's. The first wave of the invasion proceeded exactly as planned, with the Kreth's ships encountering little resistance. Earth's satellites were destroyed in minutes, and the Kreth's landing parties met with minimal opposition as they began securing strategic locations. The Kreth High Command watched the early stages of the invasion with smug satisfaction. From their perspective, everything was going according to plan. The humans seemed unprepared, their defenses crumbling under the might of the Kreth war machine. Reports from the front lines indicated that major cities were falling, and the Kreth commanders were already planning the next phase, consolidating their control over the planet and beginning the process of subjugating humanity. Victory, it seemed, was within their grasp, and the Kreth reveled in the thought of adding Earth to their list of conquered worlds. But as the invasion progressed, something began to shift. The initial ease with which the Kreth had penetrated Earth's defenses started to give way to unexpected resistance. Human forces, which had appeared disorganized and overwhelmed, suddenly began to regroup and counterattack with surprising effectiveness. The Kreth, used to facing opponents who crumbled at the sight of their superior technology, found themselves facing a foe that refused to be easily defeated. The first signs of trouble appeared in isolated skirmishes, where small groups of human soldiers managed to hold their ground against Kreth forces, using tactics that the invaders were unprepared for. The Kreth High Command, initially dismissive of these pockets of resistance, soon realized that these were not isolated incidents. Across the planet, human forces were launching coordinated counterattacks, targeting the Kreth's supply lines, communication networks, and key positions with a precision that belied their supposed inferiority. The humans were not fighting a conventional war. They were using guerrilla tactics, cyber warfare, and unconventional strategies that threw the Kreth's plans into disarray. The Kreth's overconfidence began to wane as they found themselves facing an enemy that was adapting and evolving with every passing hour. As the resistance intensified, the Kreth commanders started to comprehend the gravity of their situation. What they had thought would be a quick and decisive victory was turning into a protracted and costly engagement. Human forces were exploiting every weakness in the Kreth's strategy, using their knowledge of the terrain and their ability to innovate under pressure to their advantage. The Kreth, who had always relied on their superior firepower and numbers, found themselves at a loss against an enemy that was fighting not just to defend their planet, but to survive. The realization that the invasion was not going as planned began to set in among the Kreth's ranks. Reports of entire battalions being wiped out by human counterattacks started to reach the High Command. The Kreth's technological superiority, which they had relied on for so long, was proving insufficient against the sheer will and determination of the human defenders. The Kreth, for the first time in their history, were facing an enemy that was not just resisting, but fighting back with a ferocity that they had never encountered before. The Kreth's invasion, which had begun with such confidence and arrogance, was rapidly turning into a nightmare. Their belief in their own invincibility was shattered as they encountered a foe that was not only capable of matching them in battle but was also outthinking and outmaneuvering them at every turn. The Kreth had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price for their hubris. The invasion of Earth, instead of being a swift and glorious victory, was becoming a testament to the consequences of arrogance and the dangers of underestimating one's opponent. Humanity had long been underestimated by the Kreth, but now, with the invasion underway, it became clear that the true battle was only beginning. The initial shock of the attack quickly gave way to a calculated response. Earth's military and civilian leaders, recognizing the existential threat posed by the Kreth, coordinated a response that was as unexpected as it was effective. Drawing from a deep well of experience in asymmetric warfare, human strategists devised a plan that would exploit every weakness in the Kreth's seemingly invincible armor. The first step in humanity's counterattack was to disrupt the Kreth's command and control. Cyber warfare units, operating from hidden and fortified locations, launched a series of attacks aimed at the Kreth's communication networks. These attacks were designed not to destroy but to confuse and mislead, feeding false information into the Kreth's systems and creating chaos within their ranks. The Kreth, unaccustomed to such tactics, found themselves reacting to phantom threats and chasing decoys, while the real danger went unnoticed. This cyber assault was coupled with precision strikes by special forces, who targeted key Kreth installations with pinpoint accuracy, causing maximum disruption with minimal resources. Guerrilla tactics became the cornerstone of humanity's strategy. Small, mobile units of soldiers, familiar with the terrain and adept at hit-and-run tactics, harassed the Kreth at every turn. These units struck supply lines, ambushed patrols, and set traps that turned the Kreth's technological superiority against them. The Kreth, who had expected a straightforward battle, were unprepared for the relentless, unpredictable nature of this resistance. Every attempt to consolidate their hold on captured territories was met with fierce opposition, as humans used their knowledge of the land and their ability to adapt quickly to outmaneuver the invaders. As the counterattack gained momentum, the Kreth High Command began to feel the pressure. Reports of losses and setbacks flooded in from every front. Their forces, which had once seemed invincible, were now being systematically dismantled. Kreth commanders, who had once boasted of their inevitable victory, were now struggling to understand how their advanced technology was being rendered ineffective by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive. The Kreth's frustration grew with each passing day, as they watched their carefully laid plans unravel before their eyes. Every attempt to regain control was met with a new challenge, a new tactic that they were ill-equipped to counter. The turning point in the conflict came when humanity struck at the very heart of the Kreth's invasion force. Using intelligence gathered through a combination of cyber-espionage and human ingenuity, Earth's forces identified a critical vulnerability in the Kreth's fleet, their reliance on a single, massive flagship to coordinate their entire operation. This flagship, the pride of the Kreth fleet, was heavily protected, but not invulnerable. Human forces devised a daring plan to take it down, knowing that its destruction would cripple the Kreth's ability to command and control their forces. The operation was executed with precision and daring. A small, stealthy force managed to penetrate the Kreth's defenses and deliver a devastating blow to the flagship, disabling its shields and leaving it vulnerable to a coordinated strike from Earth's remaining space forces. The destruction of the flagship sent shockwaves through the Kreth ranks. With their central command shattered, the Kreth's forces were thrown into disarray, unable to communicate effectively or coordinate their actions. The once cohesive invasion force began to fragment, with individual units cut off and isolated, easy prey for the now emboldened human defenders. As the Kreth watched their invasion collapse, the realization of their failure began to sink in. They had severely underestimated humanity's resolve, intelligence, and capacity for warfare. What they had expected to be a quick and decisive victory had turned into a catastrophic defeat. The Kreth, who had once viewed themselves as the rightful rulers of the galaxy, now found themselves retreating in disgrace, their forces decimated and their reputation shattered. The lesson was clear: Humanity was not to be trifled with, and those who did so would pay the ultimate price. The tide had turned, and the Kreth, for all their arrogance, were left to ponder the consequences of their hubris. The Galactic Council watched the unfolding conflict between the Kreth and humanity with a mix of emotions that ranged from grim satisfaction to growing unease. The Council had long been aware of the potential danger humanity posed, and for years, they had cautioned the Kreth against provoking them. But those warnings had fallen on deaf ears. Now, as the war raged on, the Council's earlier predictions were coming to pass in ways they hadn't fully anticipated. The rapid shift in favor of humanity, once the Kretha's seemingly unstoppable invasion began to falter, was both a vindication of the Council's concerns and a cause for deep worry. Within the Council chambers, there was a palpable tension. Some members, particularly those who had been most vocal in their warnings, felt a bitter sense of vindication. They had known that humanity, with its unique blend of resilience and ingenuity, would not be easily subdued. These members argued that the Kretha's downfall was not only expected but deserved, a fitting punishment for their arrogance. However, not all Council members shared this sentiment. As humanity continued to dismantle the Kretha's forces with alarming efficiency, a growing number of councillors began to fear what this conflict revealed about humans. If humanity could so thoroughly outmaneuver and defeat the Kreth, what might they be capable of if pushed further? The potential for humanity to become a dominant, perhaps even uncontrollable, force in the galaxy was a prospect that unsettled many. Despite these internal conflicts, the Council recognized their responsibility to act. As the scale of the Kretha's losses became undeniable, the Council made several attempts to intervene. They dispatched envoys to the Kreth leadership, urging them to reconsider their strategy. The Council's messages were clear: retreat and negotiate, before it was too late. They warned that a prolonged conflict with humanity would only lead to more destruction and the eventual collapse of the Kreth Empire. The Council's hope was that reason might still prevail, that the Kreth would see the wisdom in cutting their losses and seeking a diplomatic resolution. But the Kreth, blinded by their own arrogance and wounded pride, refused to listen. Each diplomatic overture was met with defiance and disdain. The Kreth leadership, unable to accept the reality of their situation, doubled down on their efforts to crush humanity. They dismissed the Council's warnings as the fearful ramblings of lesser beings, convinced that they could still salvage a victory through sheer force. The Council's envoys returned empty-handed, their pleas for peace ignored, and the Council was left to watch as the Kreth continued down a path of self-destruction. As the situation grew more dire for the Kreth, the Council made one final attempt to avert disaster. In a last-ditch effort to prevent the complete annihilation of the Kreth forces, the Council issued a public statement to the galaxy, a stark warning directed not just at the Kreth, but at all who might be watching. The message was unequivocal: the dangers of underestimating humanity were now plain for all to see. The Council emphasized that humanity was unlike any other species, capable of adapting and overcoming even the most formidable challenges. To provoke them was to invite ruin. But the Kreth, now facing inevitable defeat, were beyond reason. The Council's final warning went unheeded, and the Kretha's fate was sealed. Within the Council, there was a sense of profound frustration and helplessness. They had seen the disaster coming, had tried to prevent it, but their efforts had been in vain. The fall of the Kreth, once a powerful and feared empire, was not just a tragedy for their people, but a grim reminder of the perilous balance of power in the galaxy. As the Kretha's empire crumbled, the Council could only reflect on what might come next. Humanity had proven themselves to be a force unlike any other, and now, the rest of the galaxy would have to contend with the consequences. The final confrontation between humanity and the Kreth was nothing short of cataclysmic. After weeks of relentless human counterattacks, the Kreth found themselves cornered, their forces battered and disorganized. Desperation had driven them to amass what remained of their invasion fleet for one last, all-or-nothing assault, hoping against hope to turn the tide in their favor. But humanity had anticipated this move. They had studied the Kretha's tactics, predicted their strategies, and prepared a response that would leave no room for escape. As the Kreth fleet advanced, they were met with a ferocity that eclipsed anything they had encountered thus far. Human forces, now fully mobilized and strategically positioned, unleashed a devastating assault. The Kreth ships, once symbols of their technological superiority, were torn apart with surgical precision. Advanced weaponry, combined with human ingenuity, overwhelmed the Kreth's defenses at every turn. There was no opportunity for retreat, no chance to regroup. The Kreth High Command, witnessing the total destruction of their forces, could only watch in stunned disbelief as their once mighty fleet was reduced to debris. In the chaos of the final battle, the Kreth's realization of their impending defeat settled in with crushing clarity. Their invasion had not just failed, it had been utterly annihilated. The High Command, who had so confidently predicted victory, now faced the undeniable truth: they had underestimated their enemy to catastrophic effect. As the last of their ships disintegrated under the relentless human assault, the Kreth's arrogance was finally shattered. The invasion force, which had set out to conquer, was now nothing more than a graveyard of twisted metal and shattered dreams. The aftermath of the battle was a scene of devastation. The Kreth, once the terror of the galaxy, were now a broken and scattered remnant of their former selves. News of the Kreth's defeat spread quickly, carried by the few survivors who had managed to escape the final confrontation. These survivors, haunted by the memory of their defeat, became unwilling messengers of a cautionary tale, a warning to all species about the consequences of underestimating humanity. The Kreth Empire, once vast and unchallenged, was now a fractured shell, its power shattered and its future uncertain. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the reality of what had transpired began to sink in. Within the Galactic Council, the reaction to the Kreth's annihilation was one of solemn reflection. The Council had long warned of the dangers of provoking humanity, and now those warnings had been fully realized. There was no satisfaction in being proven right, only a deepened sense of respect and fear for the species that had emerged victorious. The Council knew that this conflict would not just be a footnote in history, it would be a turning point. Humanity had shown itself to be a force that could not only defend its home but could dismantle even the most powerful of empires. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, and the Council understood that they would need to navigate this new reality with care. In the wake of the Kreth's defeat, the Galactic Council issued a final, unequivocal warning to all species across the galaxy: never mess with humans. This message was broadcast far and wide, ensuring that the tale of the Kreth's downfall would be known to all. The Council emphasized that humanity was not to be underestimated, that their capacity for resilience and innovation made them a formidable force that could not be subdued by conventional means. This warning was not just for the Kreth's benefit but for every species that might consider challenging humanity in the future. The story concluded with the Council's renewed perspective on humanity. No longer seen as a mere curiosity or a minor player on the galactic stage, humans were now recognized as a dominant force, one that demanded both respect and caution. The Council members, once divided in their views on humanity, were now united in their understanding of the need to approach them with both diplomacy and restraint. The consequences of arrogance had been laid bare, and the galaxy would not soon forget the lesson learned from the Kreth's tragic fate.